Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Miguel Delaney, the Independent's chief football writer, and Charlie Wyatt, the Sun's football editor. Welcome to you both. Let's just run everyone through some of these back pages then. The Eye Sport leads with Thomas Frank. Frank moves closer to taking Tottenham job, whilst Emma Raducanu and Katie Bolter doubles win at Queen's is also featured. As for the front of the Telegraph, that also splashes with Thomas Frank's imminent departure, plus also carries the story of the Lions' injury blow as Sander Fagerson becomes the latest forward to be ruled out of the tour to Australia. Back of the Metro, Express Yourself is the headline. Tuchel to offer England stars freedom in bid to unlock their full potential. And the back of the Express takes a different tack with Tuchel. Worlds apart, Tuchel fears Club World Cup tournament will have huge say in the title race. There's also mention of a real night of drama for Wales. Kevin and Hell, 4 Dragons, Belgium 4, Wales 3. Right, let's start with Thomas Frank showing the developments surrounding his potential move to become Tottenham's next head coach. Miguel, it looks like it's as good as a done deal.
Yeah, the word is everything finalised except the compensation to Brentford. That's a bit loose use of the word finalised, but all the main terms are agreed, and it'll just come down to whatever Brentford receive. But at the moment, obviously, no one thinks there's going to be any obstacle to this. And I have to say, I think it's actually a very good choice. I know it's actually been some debate about it, especially, given the emotion around the club after we won the Europa League. I'd almost go as far as saying this is actually an upgrade as a coach. It's I think a lot of clubs have been looking to Frank. A lot of the wealthier clubs have been looking to Frank for some time, and Tottenham are the ones that have made the jump. And I think it's all the more interesting because about a month ago, the word was that he wasn't as high, or he wasn't quite near the top of their list, but he's obviously jumped up there, and that isn't due to people rejecting them. That's due to his own impact. I think this will be sorted in the next few days.
Charlie, no second or third choice for Tottenham, we understand. They're going all guns blazing for Frank. Miguel, very positive about it. You similar?
Yeah, I think it will be a great appointment. And look, £10 million release course, that'll get sorted out. Clearly, Frank wants to go there. Tottenham are confident. Brentford won't stand in their way because he's been a brilliant servant over 4 years for Brentford. And let's not forget, those first 2 or 3 years, he's always had a bottom 3 budget. So to keep Brentford in the league was an incredible job, but to guide them to mid-table and beyond was outstanding. He's a really good coach. I don't understand the feeling from some Spurs fans that there's a concern over the lack of managing in Europe. He's managed in the Premier League, and they'll have no problems. I think in that front in the Champions League. Of course, it will be very, very difficult as well. And I think in the past there's been too much snobbery over sort of managers at Brentford. I could never work out why Eddie Howe wasn't getting more job offers when he was at Bournemouth. He obviously ended up getting sacked and then went to Newcastle. And equally, similar snobbery with Brentford and their manager. So, it'd be fantastic to see him get the chance at Spurs, where he'll do a great job.
Yeah, well, Tottenham have tried so many, haven't they? They'll be hoping, their fans and Levy will be hoping that this one works. Miguel, you wrote an article on this very subject at the weekend. It's on your website, why Thomas Frank is exactly the right manager for Tottenham. Can you kind of delve into this a little bit further then as to the reasons you think he's the perfect fit?
Well, first of all, I think the one thing that's worth saying is, I know Charlie touched on it there, because he's been at Brentford, there's maybe this sense that it's too big a leap. I think if Tottenham took that stance in 2014, they wouldn't have gone for Maurizio Pochettino. And we've also seen from the other side that their biggest appointments, or really kind of big club appointments, as you might say, Jose Mourinho and particularly Antonio Conte, they didn't work out as expected. And that was mostly because there just wasn't quite the fit and outlook between the managers and the club. There's almost this sense of managers doing Tottenham a favour to a certain degree, certainly in Conte's case, maybe not as much Mourinho. But I think it just shows how important the profile has to fit the club. And along those lines, okay, if Postecoglou, he ended up winning the trophy, and I know a lot of Spurs fans now have been much more positive about him, but it obviously hasn't completely worked out, especially when you look at the league position. But I think he was of a type of manager that Spurs should be going for, which was, despite his age, is basically a manager on an upward trajectory in his career who plays progressive football. And I suppose it, speaks to a certain innovation. And Frank, I think, is along those lines as well. I know another big question feeding into this, I suppose, has been whether when you look at some of Brentford's football, is that suitable for Spurs? Can he play more expansive football or change style? As well as that, the challenge of jumping up to a more intense environment. I don't think any of that will be an issue. First of all, actually, Frank has shown a really impressive adaptability throughout his time at Brentford. I think he's played at least 3 different styles of football while he's been at the club. Different approaches to keep them in the Championship, to get them up from the Championship, to stay up in the Premier League, to actually establish themselves in the Premier League. And as regards adapting to Spurs, the one thing that always stands out when you deal with, or when you go to Frank's press conferences, and this is a journalism show in that sense, so I think it's worth discussing this, is he must be one of the most rounded managers in the league. We're in an era now, I suppose, where a very dogmatic ideology has governed a lot of football tactics. And while that obviously, the managers that subscribe to obviously very impressive figures, it can make them quite intense and almost obsessive in some ways. Whereas Frank, while being, I think, a very tactically astute manager, given that he has previously been a teacher and has this more rounded world view, it does make him the sort of figure you can discuss anything with in a press conference. And he's almost become the voice of the Premier League in that sense. And I think that's why he'd be easily able to handle the more intense pressure out of Tottenham compared to a Brentford. Now, I do think this is, I'm doing quite a sales job from here, but I think it's genuinely, it is a good appointment for Spurs.
Oh, Miguel, I don't know if you're on a cut of his 10 million, but yeah, brilliant stuff. Very compelling case. We're going to move on to the back of the Sun. This is your story, Charlie. You were obviously at the press conference today. You spoke to Thomas Tuchel and Bukayo Saka, who were put up in front of the media. I'm just really interested on this line. Tuchel, Club World Cup will hurt Manchester City and Chelsea. You're saying here, or Thomas Tuchel is saying more importantly, that Arsenal and Liverpool have a huge advantage in next year's title race. Talk us through this.
Yeah, well, in this, there's the main press conference for TV, and then the written journalist. We had a separate with him today, and he was asked about the Club World Cup, but then he sort of offered up this line about he feels Arsenal and Liverpool have a huge advantage in the Premier League next season because they're not going to the United States for the Club World Cup. Chelsea and Manchester City could be there till mid-July. The season, of course, starts in mid-August. And those City and Chelsea players, of course, are going to need a proper holiday. Some of the players have had a week or so, but then they're going to have a sort of a super quick pre-season. So they're just not going to be in the right shape for the start of the season. Whereas Arsenal and Liverpool would have had more of a break. Ironically, until a year ago, Liverpool were actually going to be invited to the Club World Cup, but sort of FIFA changed the goalposts, or moved the goalposts rather, which they've been doing quite a lot, and decided that they didn't want more than two former winners. So that is why Liverpool weren't there. And now I would have thought most Liverpool fans, and certainly Arne Slot, are pretty relieved that they're going to be able to hopefully be recharged, and have another go, a proper go at their defence, and knowing that two of their rivals, because I think Chelsea would expect to improve from last season, but of course Manchester City, some of their players are going to be extremely tired, both mentally and physically. So I thought it was a very interesting line from Tuchel today. Yeah, interesting line. City obviously are bringing some new players in as well, although they'll be in the Club World Cup too. Other papers have got this line. The back of the Express says, worlds apart, Tuchel fears tournament, Club World Cup will have a huge say in the title race. The Mirror says that the Three Lions boss Tuchel, Liverpool and Arsenal already have title advantage. And just interesting lines coming out from the England manager today, Miguel. Do you kind of concur with him and Charlie that this is advantage Liverpool and Arsenal in a title race?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of many reasons I think there's been such controversy around the Club World Cup. with that, of course, I mean, one of the main debates has been how this sense from the rest of the game that FIFA have just imposed this tournament unilaterally without much consultation with stakeholders on a calendar that doesn't really have the space for it. I mean, you only have to look at the kind of the havoc it's causing in terms of kind of some international call-ups. Tuchel the other day was speaking about how he denied that clubs had asked him to not play some of their players twice in this international break, but it does just speak to kind of some of the complications here. And I mean, from all that, given that we're in an era now where we've never discussed the calendar as much, where sports science, because of that calendar, has become so important. I think one of the reasons that Liverpool won the title was basically because they kept their two best players, Van Dijk and Salah, on the pitch as much as possible in the way their main rivals couldn't. So suddenly in that sort of situation where sports science has to be so honed, where there's such a focus on injury prevention, you're suddenly throwing in this tournament, as Charlie touched on there, it just distorts all of the clubs' usual expectations and planning for pre-season training. So now suddenly some clubs almost have to see the Club World Cup as their pre-season and then give their players a break. So it's just going to completely, almost recalibrate what some of these clubs can do. It's very difficult to predict in that sense, but at the very least, they're not going to be going into the season as normal. And I think, it could create some surprises. And certainly, I do absolutely agree that Liverpool and Arsenal will have an advantage because they'll be able to prepare for a Premier League season as normal.
OK, so that's Tuchel's take on the title race. Interesting, he's also had quite a lot to say, hasn't he, about his own team, England, and some of their performances. The back of The Guardian says, play with a smile, Charlie. Tuchel challenges England to relax and hit top gear. Really critical of the players after that Andorra performance. I guess the context is there's been a busy Premier League campaign and Andorra were never going to put up that much of a fight. How much can these players keep getting themselves up? But he's saying, play with a smile, play with freedom, express yourself.
Yes, so the context of that quote was saying that he's been really happy behind the scenes, and he said that the players have been training with a smile, but they're not playing with a smile. So he was obviously really happy with what he's seen for a lot of the last few days. But of course, again, he used the quote, things haven't quite clicked, which I think, it's a bit of an understatement. I mean, all three performances going back to the two qualifiers against Albania and Latvia in March, I think they were underwhelming as well, weren't they? And of course, we've got Senegal coming up at the City Ground in Nottingham, who probably the best team England will have played since the Euros. So I think it's a fascinating test. I like Tuchel's attitude. He's certainly been honest. I think what he said to the media the last few days is exactly what he said to the players, of course. I think he's expecting a lot more, and let's hope it does start tomorrow, because I think if England's have 4 poor performances under Tuchel, I think without doubt the honeymoon period will be over.
OK, gentlemen, thank you for now. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning papers, including this in the Times. Forest write to UEFA over Palace owner. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to Miguel Delaney, the Independent's chief football writer, and Charlie Wyatt, the Sun's football editor. And Nottingham Forest have written to UEFA to express their concern over Crystal Palace potentially participating in the Europa League, given the multi-club ownership rules. This story first appeared in The Times in an article by Matt Lawton and Martin Ziegler. Sky Sports News have contacted Forest and UEFA for comments on this story. Miguel, just elaborate on it for us. And there's a touch of irony with Evangelos Marinakis, but I guess Forest well within their rights to do this.
I mean, that's a remarkable element. I have to say, are they within their rights? I mean, there are different elements to these examples. And the one thing about all this, first of all, multi-club ownerships, I don't think should exist in football. They go against what a club is supposed to be, but that's by the by, they exist now. But these rules were essentially invented to, I suppose, get around obvious problems with multi-club ownership, like potential collusion between clubs. The obvious problem when two clubs involve the same staff. Now, in this case, Textor owns 43% of Palace and has a 25% voting right. And he's obviously frequently complained that he doesn't have much say. But I suppose in terms of those issues that these rules were supposed to prevent, like Textor also owns 88% of Lyon. Palace, they don't share staff with Lyon. They don't share recruitment models in the way a lot of these multi-club organisations work. Palace really get no benefit from this. So it does feel like, obviously, I mean, the letter of the law is the letter of the law and rules are rules, but it does feel like this isn't the sort of situation that the rules were intended to prevent. And it's all the more absurd given 2 years ago, Sheffram was the UEFA president, was openly talking about one situation of a multi-club ownership where, and he used the word pretend himself, where there was almost a pretense that they don't have the same ownership. And obviously that has evolved into a situation where where owners put clubs into blind trusts to get around this. Palace didn't do that because at that point, the deadline this year was the 1st of March. At that point, they hadn't even played Millwall in the 5th round of the Cup. And as a lot of people have said, so what, every year Textor would put his share into a blind trust. I do find the story, or the situation, quite absurd. A really sour note to one of football's genuinely romantic stories, even allowing for questions you could have about how we've got here. And then this Forest element is just, I mean, it's incredible, really. And it's also difficult not to put it into the context of some Premier League politics, given I think Steve Parish is seen as the Palace chairman, is seen one of the more prominent voices in a group of, that sometimes goes to 16 clubs, it's usually about 12 to 14. And then on the other side of that, Marinakis' Forest are in a group of 4 clubs who are on another kind of voting block, who include Newcastle, City and Aston Villa. And I suppose it's just another element to this, but it's, for one of these kind of dry off-field stories that could actually have huge repercussions, it's certainly got a lot of colour to this one.
Yeah, just on those repercussions, Charlie, I mean, does it leave Palace in some sort of limbo? I mean, obviously the transfer window and things like that, some of their key players who are kind of banking potentially on the Europa League. Do the players start to kind of waver over things like that, potential incomings?
Well, yes, certainly having won the FA Cup, Glasner was saying that it could make conversation easier with potential new arrivals. Actually, Steve Parish said it in the interview area at Wembley after they won the cup. Pretty much the same thing. So it'd be a huge blow for Palace if they got kicked out. I'd feel so sorry for the supporters because many have waited. They've all waited their sort of supporting careers to get into Europe. It'd be devastating for them. Their hope, I guess, would be for Lyon to get kicked out of the Europa League, which could still happen as well. And equally on Nottingham Forest, they've been the great story the last couple of years, and I think their fans have been superb, and I really like going to City Ground, but they're not winning many friends behind the scenes. And this is the first of several stories where it's been a bit unsavoury. We've had a few other statements about referees, haven't we? And other stuff from Forest. So it's not great. And it's fair to say that I think relations between Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest will be a bit strained over the next few years.
OK, we are going to move on. Extraordinary game of football involving Belgium and Wales. Miguel, back of the Mirror, says Dragons left devastated. That, of course, because it was Kevin De Bruyne who scored the winner. Ends Craig Bellamy's unbeaten record in charge of Wales. It was a topsy-turvy thing, but Wales still come out of that game with a huge amount of credit, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, given we've been talking about the calendar and kind of maybe football, like, exhaustion and all that, this was exhilarating. One of the games of the season. And it's, I mean, yeah, like when we were preparing the show tonight, we were talking about whether we discuss it. And after 27 minutes, I think I dismissed that possibility because Belgium were 3-0 up and it looked like it was going to be a destruction. But the response was superb. And then obviously the way it ended. The only sour note to the match, I think, was actually that I think almost every major moment was checked by VAR and then actually waved through. Actually, bar Lukaku's late goal, which is ruled out, only for De Bruyne, who again looked incredible, given he's a free agent at the moment, to get that winner after a super ball from Tielemans. But yeah, despite the result, huge credit to Wales for the kind of the recovery, the resilience, and they could be proud despite obviously the pretty bitter way the game ended.
OK, let's get to some transfers then, and Charlie's paper, The Sun. A couple of interesting ones on the back. Erik ten Hag keen to buy Jack. That's by Leverkusen, of course, offering him a bit of an escape route. And Victor Gyökeres going to United, Charlie, which is potentially exciting given they've got Cunha, they're linked with Mbumo, things starting to take off potentially for United.
Yeah, it'd be a terrific signing for United. Of course, since Amorim arrived in England, we've been talking about potentially Gyökeres following him. So it almost feels inevitable, and that seems to have gathered pace, even though Arsenal really like him as well. And as for the other one, that would be a tremendous transfer story if Jack Grealish goes to the Bundesliga. Apparently, he's open to a potential move to Germany to play for Bayer Leverkusen, who, of course, are going to be losing a star player themselves. So that would be really interesting, and I think it could benefit him really. I mean, I understand that Newcastle would really like him on loan from City, but they'd have to cover his £300,000 a week wages. But yeah, Jack Grealish in the Bundesliga would be yes, it's something to really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about the potential incomings to Manchester City in just a minute, Miguel, and the Jack Grealish situation perhaps offers some sort of warning to those players. You think you're joining a thoroughbred in Manchester City, but there's no guarantee of game time. But is it time for Grealish to move on, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always, I suppose, been there's two sides to his own time at City. He's won so much, and yet it's felt like he's almost been kind of like, for a player who had been such a kind of a joyful individualist, he became just kind of a very systemized player under Guardiola. It often felt he was purely there just for almost kind of ball retention or to ease pressure, rather than get to express himself in the way we would have expected. And from that, I think that's one of the biggest reasons, I suppose, why he's dropped off, why he hasn't played as much, because we're not seeing the true Jack Grealish really, and why he's needed a move for some time. And I think the Bundesliga is actually, it's famously more open space than the Premier League because of the nature of it and the way they play it. I think that could be another reason that benefits from, and just a change as well. And it'd be great to see Grealish back to his best self.
OK, in terms of coming into Manchester City, Ryan Ait-Nouri has made that move from Wolves, Charlie. This on the Guardian website. I mean, this looks like a pretty decent deal for City because he's proven in the Premier League. He chips in with goals. He'll give them that pace and width down the left-hand side. What do you make of it?
Yeah, excellent signing. Really solid, as you say. Good attacking edge. I can see why City have wanted to get it done early. Of course, Club World Cup, and as we said, earlier in the show, they're going to have a real problem come sort of July to August with their players who could be quite tired. So you can see why they're looking to bring in some more players at the moment.
Ryan Cherky, just quickly, Miguel, about 30 seconds left on the show. £34 million fee, according to the Mail. One of the greatest technicians in Europe. Looks exciting, but it does come with that caveat of the kind of Grealish example.
I mean, he has been talked about as one of the kind of great talents in European football over the last 2 years. He's put in some brilliant under-21 displays. Maybe there's been a few questions over whether he can be kind of a bit of an individualist himself, as you say. It's a surprisingly low price, actually. But City have got someone that a lot of other clubs had a look at and really wanted.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. We have run out of time, but appreciate your contribution. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30, and the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, and Thomas Frank, it looks like Tottenham are closing in on their man. It's going to cost them around £10 million in compensation. We'll have the full story coming up for you next.